I was holding a sapphire ring in my pocket, rehearsing the words I would say to the woman I loved. It was 2 days before Valentine's Day, and I had spent 3 months planning the perfect proposal for Clarabelle. We had been together for 2 years, and I had never been more certain about anything in my life. She was kind, gentle, and had this way of making even ordinary moments feel special. But there was something about her best friend Margot that always made my stomach turn. I could never quite explain it. That uneasy feeling would soon make terrible sense. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this unfolds. Let me take you back to where it all started so you can understand just how deep this betrayal cut. I met Clarabelle 3 years ago at a small independent coffee shop in the Pearl District of Portland. It was one of those rainy October afternoons that the Pacific Northwest is famous for, and I had ducked inside to escape the downpour. She was sitting by the window, grading papers with a red pen in one hand and a cup of chamomile tea in the other. I remember thinking she looked like she belonged in a painting. Her chestnut brown hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and when she looked up and caught me staring, her pale green eyes crinkled at the corners as she smiled. I am a software engineer, the kind of guy who spends most of his day staring at code and debugging programs. Talking to strangers, especially beautiful ones, was not exactly my strong suit. But something about her made me brave that day. I walked over, made some awkward comment about the rain, and she laughed. Not a polite laugh, but a real one. The kind that made me feel like maybe I was funnier than I thought. Clarabelle was 27 years old, a third-grade teacher at a public school in Southeast Portland. She had this gentle nature about her, always seeing the best in people, sometimes to a fault. She believed that everyone deserved kindness and second chances. It was one of the things I loved most about her, and also the thing that would eventually be used against her. Our first real date was a walk along the Willamette River. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me about growing up in a small town in eastern Oregon, about her dream of one day writing children's books, about how she cried every single year on the last day of school when her students moved on. I told her about my family in California, about how I moved to Portland for a job and ended up falling in love with the city. By the time we reached the St. John's Bridge, the sun was setting and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. That was when I told her I wanted to see her again. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. 2 years later, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I bought a sapphire ring because she once told me that diamonds felt too expected, that she loved the depth of blue sapphires, how they reminded her of the ocean at twilight. I planned to propose on Valentine's Day at Pittock Mansion overlooking the city lights. Everything was perfect. Or so I thought. Then there was Margot. She had been Clarabelle's best friend since their freshman year at the University of Oregon, where they both studied education. They had been roommates, study partners, and confidants through all the ups and downs of college life. Clarabelle spoke about her with such warmth, always defending her, always making excuses for her sharp edges. Margot was 30 years old with jet black hair cut in a severe bob that framed her angular face. She dressed in dark colors, always put together, always looking like she was about to chair a board meeting or deliver a verdict. There was something calculating in the way she observed people, like she was constantly measuring them against some invisible standard and finding them lacking. She had been engaged once about 3 years before I met Clarabelle. The engagement ended badly when she discovered her fiancé had been seeing someone else. Since then, Margot had developed a bitter philosophy about men. She genuinely believed that all men were capable of betrayal, that it was only a matter of time before they showed their true colors. She would say things like every man has a price, and loyalty is just a word men use until something better comes along. It made me uncomfortable, but Clarabelle always brushed it off. She is just hurt, Clarabelle would say. She needs time to heal. Once she meets the right person, she will change her mind. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But starting in December, something shifted. Margot began calling Clarabelle more often, wanting to meet for coffee or dinner multiple times a week. Every time Clarabelle came home from seeing her, she seemed different, quieter, more contemplative. Sometimes she would ask me strange questions out of nowhere. "Do you think you could ever be tempted by another woman?" she asked one night while we were washing dishes. I laughed it off. "Where is this coming from?" "Just curious," she said, but she did not meet my eyes. Another time I overheard her on the phone with Margot. I was not trying to eavesdrop, but Margot's voice was loud enough to carry through the door. "You deserve to know the truth about him before it is too late," Margot said. When Clarabelle hung up and saw me standing there, she quickly explained that they were talking about a movie, some thriller about a woman who discovers her husband's secret life. I nodded and let it go, but the explanation felt hollow. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. But I pushed those feelings aside. I had a proposal to plan, and I was not going to let paranoia ruin the most important night of our lives. Valentine's Day was fast approaching, and I threw myself into making everything perfect. I made a reservation at Departure, a rooftop restaurant in downtown Portland with panoramic views of the city and Mount Hood in the distance. I requested a table by the window, arranged for Roses to be waiting when we arrived, and even coordinated with the staff to have a violinist play our favorite song during dessert. The ring sat in a velvet box in my sock drawer, hidden behind old college t-shirts. Every night after Clarabelle fell asleep, I would take it out and look at it, imagining the moment I would slide it onto her finger. I wrote her a letter 4 pages of everything I loved about her, every reason why I wanted to spend forever by her side. I took the day off work to prepare buying candles, her favorite flowers, which were peonies, not roses, for the apartment, and a new dress shirt. Because she once mentioned she loved me in blue, I had no idea that while I was planning the most romantic night of our lives, Margot was engineering its destruction. It started about 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. Margot invited Claribel over for wine and what she called girl talk. But instead of the usual gossip and laughter, Margot had an agenda. She began telling Claribel stories about men who had betrayed the women who loved them. There was her own ex-fiancé, of course, who had been sleeping with a co-worker for 6 months before Margot found out. Then there was her co-worker Amanda, whose husband had a secret second phone and a profile on 3 different dating apps. Her sister's boyfriend, who had gotten another woman pregnant while they were planning their wedding. A neighbor whose husband had been sending money to an ex-girlfriend for years. Story after story, each one more devastating than the last. Margot painted a picture of a world where no man could be trusted, where betrayal was not a possibility, but an inevitability. "I am not saying your boyfriend is definitely cheating," Margot said, swirling her wine. "But how would you even know the wives in these stories had no idea either? Their husbands seemed perfect too." Claribel defended me at first. She told Margot about our relationship, about how honest and open we were with each other, about how I had never given her any reason to doubt me. Margot just smiled sadly. "That is exactly what they all said. The perfect ones are the best at hiding it." She planted seeds of doubt, small at first, then larger. She reminded Claribel of the times I worked late, suggesting that maybe I was not actually at the office. She pointed out that I sometimes took my phone to the bathroom, implying I had something to hide. She reframed every innocent behavior as potentially suspicious. Then she proposed the test. "There is a way to know for sure," Margot said. "A loyalty test. We get an attractive woman to approach him, flirt with him, see how he responds. If he is truly faithful, he will reject her, and you will have peace of mind. If he is not, well, better to find out now than after you have wasted more years on him." Claribel was horrified at first. She refused immediately, saying it was manipulative and wrong that she trusted me and did not need to test me. But Margot did not give up. Over the next 2 weeks, she kept pushing. She sent Claribel articles about infidelity statistics, about how many relationships end because of cheating stories from online forums about women who wish they had known sooner. She framed the test as an act of self-protection, not distrust. "If he passes, I will never say another word about it," Margot promised. "I will admit I was wrong and support your relationship completely. But if he fails, you will have saved yourself years of heartache. What do you have to lose?" Slowly, painfully, Claribel began to waver. The constant barrage of negativity had done its work. She started remembering small moments insignificant at the time and viewing them through a lens of suspicion. The late nights at work, the time I did not answer her call because I was in a meeting, the female coworker whose name came up in conversation once or twice. Finally, 3 days before Valentine's Day, Clarabelle agreed to the test. She did not tell me. She did not ask me directly about her concerns. She let Margot convince her that deception was the only way to find the truth. But Margot's plan went far beyond a simple loyalty test. She did not just want to test me. She wanted to destroy us. Margot had already contacted a woman named Brianna, an actress friend of a friend, who was willing to play the role of temptress for $200. But Margot had also set up what she called Plan B. She reached out to a man named Derek, a former coworker of hers, who had always been a little too smooth, a little too willing to cross lines. Derek was the kind of guy who saw other people's relationships as challenges to be conquered. If he passes the test, we move to Plan B, Margot told Derek over the phone. Clarabelle will be emotionally vulnerable. She needs to see that she has options, that she does not need him. Derek agreed eagerly. He had seen photos of Clarabelle and was more than happy to play his part. The trap was set. 3 different plans were about to collide on Valentine's Day. Mine was about love. Margot's was about destruction. And Clarabelle, the woman caught in the middle, had no idea she was being used as a pawn in someone else's bitter game. Valentine's Day arrived with unseasonably clear skies. Portland was cold, but beautiful. The kind of crisp winter evening that made the city lights sparkle like earthbound stars. I spent the morning cleaning our apartment, arranging the peonies I had bought in a vase on the kitchen table, and going over my proposal speech one more time. The ring was in my jacket pocket, the letter in my inside breast pocket close to my heart. I kept touching them throughout the day, reassuring myself they were still there. I was nervous in the best possible way, the kind of nervous that comes from standing on the edge of something wonderful. I arrived at departure at 6:30, half an hour before our reservation. The hostess led me to our table by the window, where a single red rose waited in a slim vase. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long golden shadows across the restaurant. I ordered a glass of water and waited. At 6:45, Clarabelle texted me, "Running a little late." Margot needed to talk about something. Be there in 30 minutes. Love you. I frowned at my phone. Why would she be with Margot on Valentine's Day? But I pushed the thought aside. Maybe Margot was having some kind of crisis. Clarabelle was always there for her friends, even when the timing was inconvenient. It was one of the things I loved about her. I texted back a heart emoji and settled in to wait. That was when Brianna made her move. She appeared at my table as if from nowhere, a striking woman in a tight red dress with blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. She was beautiful in an obvious way, the kind of beauty that demanded attention. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, already sliding into the chair across from me. "It is so sad to see someone alone on Valentine's Day." "I am not alone," I said politely. "I am waiting for my girlfriend." Brianna pouted. "That is too bad. A handsome guy like you should not have to wait. She must not appreciate you very much if she's keeping you waiting tonight of all nights." I shifted uncomfortably. "She had something come up. She will be here soon." Brianna leaned forward, giving me a clear view down the front of her dress. "Well, until she gets here, maybe I can keep you company. I hate being alone on Valentine's Day. Do you know what that is like? Watching everyone else with their partners while you are sitting by yourself." "I'm sorry you're alone tonight," I said, trying to be kind but firm. "But I am really not interested in company. Actually, I am planning to propose to my girlfriend tonight." Something flickered in Brianna's eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or respect. But she did not leave. Instead, she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "Are you sure sometimes people get cold feet right before big commitments? It is natural to want to explore your options one last time." I pulled my hand back like I had been burned. "There is no cold feet. There are no options to explore. I love her. I want to marry her. And I think there is some kind of misunderstanding here, so please leave." I stood up, putting physical distance between us. My voice was louder than I intended, and a few nearby diners glanced our way. Brianna's confident facade cracked for just a moment. She stood gathering her purse. "Your loss," she muttered, but there was something defeated in her tone. As she walked away, I saw her pull out her phone and type something quickly. I did not know it then, but that text read, "He did not take the bait." 15 miles away, at a dimly lit bar in the Alberta Arts District, Margot read that text with a scowl. Clarabelle sat beside her nursing a glass of wine, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "See," Margot said, showing Clarabelle her phone. But the message on the screen was not from Brianna. It was a photo one that Margot had prepared in advance. The image showed me sitting at the restaurant table, but it had been cleverly edited. In the doctored version, Brianna was leaning close to me, her hand on my cheek, and I appeared to be smiling at her. The angle and lighting made it look intimate, romantic even. "I am so sorry, honey," Margot said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I did not want to be right. I really did not." Clarabelle stared at the photo, her face crumbling. "That cannot be real. He would not do that. He would not." "I wish I could say I was surprised," Margot sighed. "But I told you, all men are the same. They are just better or worse at hiding it." That was when Derek appeared right on cue. He was tall and conventionally attractive with dark hair and a confident smile that probably worked on most women. He approached their table like he had just happened to notice them, like this was all coincidence. "Margot, I thought that was you. What are you doing here?" Margot feigned surprise. "Derek, what a coincidence. This is my friend Clarabelle. She is having a rough night." Derek's expression shifted to one of practiced concern. "On Valentine's Day." "That is terrible. What happened?" "Her boyfriend," Margot said, shaking her head. "Turns out he is not the man she thought he was." Derek slid into the booth next to Clarabelle, his knee brushing against hers. "That is awful. A beautiful woman like you deserves so much better than that. Can I buy you a drink? Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who understands." Clarabelle was in shock, her mind reeling from the photo she had just seen. She barely registered Derek's arrival, barely noticed when a fresh drink appeared in front of her. She drank it automatically, trying to numb the pain that was spreading through her chest like poison. Derek was smooth. He said all the right things, agreed with everything she said, told her she was too good for someone who would treat her that way. He compared himself favorably to me, the faceless villain who had supposedly betrayed her. "Some guys do not know what they have until it is gone." Derek said, his voice low and intimate. "If I had someone like you, I would never even look at another woman." The drinks kept coming. Clarabelle drank more than she should have, trying to drown the image of me with another woman. Margot kept refilling her glass, encouraging her, telling her she deserved to let loose after what she had been through. At some point, Derek moved closer. His arm went around her shoulders. He whispered something in her ear, and then he kissed her. It lasted only a few seconds before Clarabelle pulled away, confusion and guilt flooding her face. But those seconds were enough. From across the bar, Margot lifted her phone and took a photo. Evidence of her victory. I knew none of this. I was still at the restaurant watching the minutes tick by, my water glass empty and my anxiety mounting. At 7:30, an hour after Clarabelle was supposed to arrive, I called her. No answer. I texted. No response. I called again. Nothing. Something was very wrong. I opened our shared location app, something we had set up months ago for safety reasons. Her dot blinked at a location about 8 blocks away, a bar called the Whiskey Library. I left cash on the table and ran out of the restaurant, not bothering to wait for my coat. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I barely felt it. All I could think about was finding Clarabelle, making sure she was okay. I reached the bar in 10 minutes, my heart pounding from more than just the exertion. Through the window, I could see the interior dim and crowded with Valentine's Day couples. And there, in a corner booth, I saw her. Clarabelle was sitting close to a man I did not recognize. Too close. His arm was around her, and she was leaning into him, her body language intimate in a way that made my stomach drop. Margot sat across from them, watching with an expression I could not quite read. For a moment, I could not breathe. The ring in my pocket suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Every dream I had built for this night, for our future, crumbled to dust. I pushed through the door and walked straight to their booth. Clarabelle looked up and saw me, and the color drained from her face. "Marcus," she whispered. "I have been waiting for you," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, hollow. "At the restaurant, for over an hour. I was going to propose to you tonight. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the velvet box, holding it up so she could see it. The sapphire caught the dim light and sparkled beautiful and useless. Clarabelle's eyes filled with tears. Derek looked uncomfortable for the first time all night, clearly realizing he had stepped into something bigger than a simple seduction. But Margot's expression shifted to something ugly, something triumphant. "She deserves to know what kind of man you really are," Margot said, her voice sharp. "I have proof of what you were doing tonight while she was waiting for you." She thrust her phone toward me, showing the doctored photo of me and Brianna. In the image, we looked like lovers, not strangers. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. Something about it was wrong. The angle, the lighting, the way my face was turned. And then I realized what it was. "That is not real," I said. "Look at my watch. In that photo, the time shows 5:15. I did not even arrive at the restaurant until 6:30. And my shirt, I am wearing blue tonight, not white. This image is fake." Margot's confident expression wavered. Clarabelle grabbed the phone, looking more closely, seeing the discrepancies I had pointed out. "Margot," Clarabelle said slowly, "what is going on?" Before Margot could answer, a voice came from behind me. "I can explain." I turned to see Brianna standing there, the woman in the red dress from the restaurant. She looked different now, smaller somehow, her earlier confidence stripped away. "She paid me," Brianna said, pointing at Margot, "$200 to flirt with your boyfriend, try to get him to cheat. But he would not even give me the time of day. He told me about you, about the proposal. He could not have been more clear that he was not interested." She pulled out her phone and showed a text thread with Margot laying out the plan in damning detail. "I felt terrible about it afterward," Brianna continued. "What she is doing is not right. I followed her here to tell you the truth." The bar had gone quiet around us. Everyone was watching now, this drama playing out in public. Clarabelle turned to Margot, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. "You set this up, all of it." Margot tried to recover. "I was protecting you. You cannot trust men. I was just trying to show you." "You were not protecting me." Clarabelle's voice rose, trembling with emotion. "You were projecting your own pain onto my relationship. You could not stand seeing me happy because you are miserable. That is not friendship. That is sabotage." She turned to Derek, who was trying to quietly slide out of the booth. "And you," she said, blocking his path. "You knew exactly what you were doing, taking advantage of a woman who is being emotionally manipulated. You are just as bad as she is." Clarabelle stood up, and despite the tears streaming down her face, there was steel in her spine. "We are done, Margot. Whatever friendship we had, it is over. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not ever speak to me again." She walked past me toward the door. I followed, leaving Margot sitting alone in the booth, her carefully constructed plan in ruins around her. We walked in silence for a long time. The night was cold, but neither of us seemed to notice. We ended up at the waterfront, sitting on a bench overlooking the Willamette River. The city lights reflected in the dark water. "I am so sorry," Clarabelle finally said, her voice broken. "I should have trusted you. I should have seen through her manipulation. I do not know how I let her convince me to do something so terrible." I sat beside her, not touching, just existing in the same space while I tried to process everything that had happened. "I'm not going to pretend this does not hurt," I said honestly. "It hurts more than I know how to express. But I also see that you were a victim too. She spent weeks working on you, breaking down your trust, filling your head with fear and doubt. That is not a simple mistake. That is manipulation." I pulled out the ring box, turning it over in my hands. "I was going to ask you to marry me tonight," I said. "I had a whole speech prepared. I was going to tell you about the moment I knew I wanted to spend my life with you. It was that night on the St. John's Bridge when you pointed out a family of ducks swimming past, and you got so excited that you almost fell over the railing. I knew then that I wanted to watch you discover joy in small things for the rest of my life." Clarabelle was crying harder now, her shoulders shaking. "I cannot propose tonight," I continued. "Not like this. There is too much damage, too much that needs to be healed, but I am also not walking away. I love you, Clarabelle. That has not changed. What has changed is that we have work to do, both of us, to rebuild what was broken tonight." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend however long it takes earning back your trust." We sat there until the cold finally drove us home. We slept in the same bed that night, but there was a distance between us that had not existed before. Healing would take time. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. We started seeing a couples counselor working through the betrayal and the broken trust. Clarabelle began individual therapy as well, trying to understand why she had been so susceptible to Margot's manipulation, why she had allowed fear to override everything she knew to be true about us. She cut Margot out of her life completely, blocked her number, unfriended her on social media, told mutual friends that she was not interested in any updates about Margot's life. It was painful for her because, despite everything, there had been real friendship there once. But she recognized that whatever good had existed between them had been poisoned beyond recovery. I learned things about myself too. I learned that forgiveness is not a single moment, but a daily choice. Some days it was easy. Other days, the image of her in that booth with Derek would flash through my mind, and I would have to remind myself that she was not my enemy. Margot was. Derek was. Clarabelle was someone who had been used as a weapon against our relationship. We heard through mutual acquaintances that Margot faced consequences for her actions. The story spread through their social circle, and one by one other friends began distancing themselves from her. People who had once trusted her started looking back at their own interactions, wondering if they had been manipulated too. She became increasingly isolated, the architect of her own loneliness. Derek's involvement did not go unpunished either. Clarabelle found out he worked for a company with strict policies about personal conduct, and she filed a formal complaint about his behavior that night. He was put on probation and required to attend ethics training. It was a small victory, but it mattered. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and summer faded into fall. Our relationship was different than it had been before Valentine's Day, but different is not always worse. We communicated more. We were more intentional about our time together. We did not take each other for granted. On a random Tuesday in October, I came home from work to find Clarabelle cooking dinner in our small kitchen. She was humming to herself some song I did not recognize, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The evening light was streaming through the window, catching the dust motes floating in the air. And I knew the moment was right. Not because it was special, but because it was ordinary. Because this was what our life would look like day after day, year after year. And I wanted every single one of those days. I walked up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist. "Marry me," I said. She turned around, eyes wide. "What?" I reached into my pocket where I had been carrying the ring for weeks, waiting for this moment without knowing when it would come. No fancy restaurant, no elaborate plans, just you and me in our kitchen on a Tuesday. Marry me. She started laughing and crying at the same time, her hands flying to her mouth. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." I slid the sapphire ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, just like us. Looking back on everything that happened, I learned some things I want to share with you. Trust is not about never being tested. It is about how you rebuild when things fall apart. And not everyone who claims to protect you has your best interest at heart. Some people want to see you fail so they feel less alone in their misery. If you are in a relationship, cherish the trust you have built. Water it like a garden. And if someone ever tries to make you doubt your partner without solid proof, ask yourself, what do they have to gain from your unhappiness? Margot wanted Clarabelle to be as broken as she was. She could not stand the idea that someone else had found the love that she had lost. Her loyalty test was never about protecting anyone. It was about destruction. But here's the things about destruction. Sometimes it clears the ground for something stronger to grow. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a friend who tried to sabotage your relationship? How did you handle it? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you are facing, you find the strength to trust the people who deserve it, and the wisdom to recognize those who do not. Take care of yourselves, and remember, real love is not about passing tests. It is about choosing each other even on the hardest days.